And I'm excited to have on this show individual who I believe is truly a warm, energetic, compassionate, and insightful spirit. Um, Forgive me if I pronounce your name incorrectly, Mona, but I want to welcome to King Connections podcast, Mona Farid-Nejad.
Great job.
Well, thank you. Thank you. How are you doing today, Mona?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm in Los Angeles, and we are fortunate that we have beautiful weather. One of my friends put it well. She says she's solar powered, and I think I would agree with that. So having the sun out is really nice.
I love that answer, solar power. That's a great way of looking at it. Thank you for sharing that. Well, as we begin, one of my first questions I asked to really kind of establish the tone is to ask, what's your spiritual energy number? And what I mean by that is a number from 0 to 10, where 0 is life sucks, to 10 being life is awesome. Where would you say you fit in that spectrum today?
Today, honestly, it's been a lovely week in general. So, and I'm feeling exceptionally grateful. So I would say up there in the 9-10 range this week. If you'd asked me last week, maybe something would have been different, but this week and today, probably a 9 or 10.
Excellent, excellent. And the reason I asked that question is I believe everything is energy. And what I've learned from when I have meetings and when I have these shows, if I meet people and they're at a 2 or a 3, then the energy is just not going to be there. They're not going to be very present, and we're not going to be able to produce a really great show. So thank you for indulging me with that, because I know when you answer 9 or 10, then there's infinite possibilities that can happen from it. So thank you for indulging me with that question. So as we begin, my first question I love to ask is, and really establish why I interview conscious leaders or folks who have a higher purpose behind what they do than just make money, who, I like to say, live their life with this higher purpose. So in that respect, what would you say is your purpose in life?
So it's funny. I actually did this exercise once where I looked back on, and I would encourage anyone to do it. It's honestly quite eye-opening. Where I looked back on everything I wanted to be growing up. And, it started off, I wanted to be a doctor, then like a physician. I wanted to be a chemist. I wanted to cure AIDS. I wanted to do all of these things. And when I looked back on all of these different things, except for that blip when I was in high school and I wanted to be a singer, that was a little more ego-driven. But by and large, like the things that I wanted to do were all about solving problems and helping people. And so I decided that I would own that, because that still very much resonates with me today. And there are infinite ways to do it. And I get an opportunity in my day-to-day life to exercise that muscle, to solve problems and help people.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a beautiful answer, by the way. We're constantly hearing in today's terminology, this term conscious leader been thrown around quite a bit. And I know it can mean a lot of different definitions depending on who you ask. So I'm always curious to ask different conscious leaders that I interview, how would you define a conscious leader?
And I agree with you. It is defined very differently depending on this. It's funny, I travel in multiple circles that define it quite differently, in fact. But the way that I personally look at conscious leadership is it's leadership that's based in values rather than profits or gain. And as such, it requires a little bit of self-awareness. So most of my awareness of conscious leadership comes from social sector work and from mindfulness. So if it were up to me, I would kind of blend the two. I would say that a person who is a conscious leader is someone who is self-aware enough to know what their values are, and then to act with intention and integrity toward those values, to not only enhance the meaning in their own lives, but to enhance the lives of the stakeholders that they interact with. And the great thing about that is that we can all be conscious leaders in that respect. You don't have to have positional power in an organization to be a conscious leader. You can be a conscious leader in your community. You can be a conscious leader in your own family, by learning about your own values and then making a point of it to live by them and to do things with integrity in a way that helps and supports not just yourself, but the people that you get the privilege of interacting with on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. I love that answer. I love that perspective as well. Thank you for sharing that. You know, my next question is one that really helps me, and you kind of alluded to it earlier. When I build connections with individuals, I find myself being attracted to people who have a grateful spirit. And in that respect, what would you say you're most grateful for?
Oh, so many things. Like I said, it's been a good week. But at the core of it, I do a little gratitude exercise every night before I go to bed. And inevitably, the thing that comes up over and over and over again is I am immensely grateful for the people in my life. I am the type of person who loves people. And my support system and the people that I get the opportunity to meet every day mean everything to me. So I would say the people in my life, new friends, old friends, family, all of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, you're doing a wonderful job. This is why I love interviewing individuals who are conscious, and particularly you, because the answers you give are directly in alignment with mine. And that's really why I love doing this podcast. You really can show the world what kind of leaders are out there and kind of people out there in this time of separation that the media tries to put us into these forced tribes. So thank you for answering these questions the way you're answering, authentic and true. Now, as we talk about some of the work that you do, and this is where you and I also have alignment as well. I'm a data-driven individual in everything that I do. And my question for you is, why do you believe it's important to use data to drive organizational change?
So I believe that there are lots of sources of information and that data is a very valuable one. And the reason that I think data is really valuable is I oftentimes work in environments where the people who make decisions are often the people who have the most power, whether it's in the community, in organizations, what have you. So, and one of the things that happens, which is interesting, is that as people move their way up the ranks, they see themselves as just being the same person they've always been. But they don't understand that the power dynamics have shifted and their perspectives shifted over time. And sometimes that can put us out of touch with the people that we're aiming to serve, the people that we're aiming to work with, to collaborate with, to gain insights from, perspectives from. And I mean, if you look at the decision-making research, for example, we learn that when we're trying to solve problems, we come up with our best solutions when we're able to identify the most alternatives to choose from. And as any one person, you only have your own perspective to go off of. So in collecting data, not only are you illuminating and lifting up the voices of people that you intend to work with in some capacity or to serve in some capacity, but you're also allowing them to bring new alternatives to the table that can not only help your decision making, but also help that decision making to be more innovative. So I think it's an incredible learning tool to be able to collect data, and it can help us to limit our biases as, you know, people sitting in whatever position we happen to find ourselves in. So
now, in reading your bio, you know, I learned that you have either recently accomplished receiving your doctorate, or you're in the process of completing a dissertation for your doctorate. And I just wanted to ask you, what does achieving that goal of receiving a doctorate mean for you?
It's funny, when I first started, the letters meant everything to me. There was more ego involved, I think, initially. There was a lot of, you know, like, oh, I'm going to have these letters at the end of my name. And over time, when you spend as long as I have in a graduate program, the letters start to mean less. But it's given me the opportunity to meet some of the most incredible people I've ever met in my life that are doing big, important things in the world and are agents for change. But I think for me personally, what it's meant to me is that I can go through and overcome something that's really challenging, and that's a ton of work, because I don't think there's a single task that I've ever worked so diligently on for such a long period of time. Um, and so it gives me a little bit of self-efficacy that in future challenges, I can also probably manage to get through it. Um, and I think we need that sometimes. I think that's the benefit of challenging yourself, is that when you overcome it, it can be extremely rewarding, and it can help you to build your confidence for the next thing.
Absolutely. Goals are designed to grow you. So you got your goals are small, that you're not gonna get much growth. When you take a goal that requires a lot of time, sacrifice, energy, uncertainty, then from that you not only grow, but you learn a lot about yourself along that journey. So absolutely. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you, because I know you do a lot of work helping organizations manage their stakeholders and work with stakeholders. So what are some of the common mistakes that you see with regards to organizations and companies with regards to stakeholder management?
I think, circling back to what I mentioned earlier, oftentimes people in positions of leadership are really smart and really strategic and really great at what they do. That's why they're in the positions that they're in. But I think there's this assumption sometimes that because we're in those leadership roles that we know what's best for everyone, when in all actuality, we don't. And there's a concept that I recently have been learning more about, and it's this idea of power building. And it takes root in community and social justice, and not even just social justice, but any kind of community-based effort. And the idea is that a community will understand themselves, their own problems, and the best solutions better than anyone else. And the more that not only can we hear our community's voice or our stakeholders' voices, but in some ways empower them and actually push power in their direction so that they can slowly and gradually enter into a leadership position while having the support of collaborators and resources and things from the outside that they need to be able to do their best work, that they can be quite effective. And I think one of the things we forget sometimes, because it is so much easier to just make decisions by ourselves, is we forget to include other people, and we forget to hear those voices, and we forget to share power.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm curious, as based on that answer, what you have exhibited in your answers today, and obviously in the work that you do, a tremendous amount of emotional intelligence and self-awareness and empathy. And I'm curious to know, where do those characteristics come from? What kind of put those in you, and what influences in your life kind of put you in that direction?
I have like two of the most loving parents ever. My mother especially, she loves everyone, and she loves hard. And she just and I'm fortunate that I got to grow up with someone like that. Both my parents were always so generous. Anytime anyone came over, they would like pull out the whole feast. They would cook whatever they had at their disposal. It was always about making people feel welcome, being warm, connecting. And just, yeah, we've always really valued people and really enjoyed them.
Excellent. Excellent. My parents were warm in that context, particularly my mother, servant leader. Still to this day, she's always concerned about how could she help someone. It was always that person in the community that everyone identified as that matriarch of the community, for support, for love, for guidance. So I understand exactly what you mean. That's why I wanted to ask that question. Did they come from your parents? And exactly, you gave that answer. So thank you for sharing.
Right.
Now, can you provide an example of your analysis that impacted systems change with regards to employee equity or economic equity?
So I worked on a project. It wasn't even my project. It was a project I was helping out on. And without naming any names, it was actually really neat. It was a health collaborative based in a rural part of the country. And they were concerned with developing a more holistic understanding of community health. And a big part of that was economic equity.
Mm.
And so, amongst a host of other factors, but what they did was they funded a bunch of nonprofits, and specifically, they funded one nonprofit that was working in a region where it's been kind of gentrifying over time and changing. And there's this new wave of people coming in, and what that's historically done throughout the area is it's priced people out of their own communities. And and historically these have been BIPOC communities that have been in this region for a very, very long time. So what they decided to do was kind of two-pronged. One, they helped to get the BIPOC families who lived in those communities. They helped them to establish businesses in areas that were going to be developed, so that not only would they not get priced out of their communities, but they would actually thrive with incoming individuals coming in. They also helped to change housing policy so that people would have safer housing and be able to live longer, healthier lives throughout the community. Um, so that work has been really fascinating, because I don't personally get to do the systems change work, but I get to support people who do, and hearing stories like that is so inspiring.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That definitely speaks to something similar I'm working towards. So I definitely resonate with that. In helping the community to begin to be self-sustaining and not sit there and ask for fish, but learn how to fish themselves and thrive as a result of the change that's coming to the community. I think it's important, and I think it should be modeled along any area that's beginning to have this gentrification change happen. So I definitely salute that, and I thank you for sharing that story as well. Now, what would you say, and this is an important question that I love to ask folks who are believers in leadership mentality or ideology, what are you most committed to?
So a big part of the work that I do and that I really enjoy is company culture work.
Hmm.
And I feel like there is an opportunity, because we go out and we spend, I guess if you're part-time, you potentially work less, but let's say you're a full-time employee, you're working anywhere from like 30 to, I've seen people work 60, 80, 90 hours a week. And in that time, which 60, 80, 90 hours of work is a lot of time, too much, in fact, uh, there is an opportunity to make people's lives better through work. And my commitment is to consistently aim to make people's lives better through work, to make people's lives more enriched through work. Because in some ways, work has a lot of the features that are good for people's well-being. If one, if we can cultivate that. So, there's opportunity for relationships, there's opportunity for achievement, there's opportunity for meaning, there's opportunity for positive emotions. And the more we experience these different types of factors in the workplace, the happier and more well we are and we feel, and the more we can grow. And we spend so much of our time at work, and we, on Sunday nights, so many people are dreading going back to work on Monday. And I'm honestly just really curious if we can change that. If we can make work an enriching place that people look forward to going to, where they feel valued, where they feel like they matter and they have an impact.
Absolutely. Again, something else that we're in alignment with. And that's one of the missions that I'm on, is helping conscious leaders to build business and connect with their purpose so that they can get their stakeholders, meaning their employees, the community, their customers, all engaged in alignment with their mission. They can support that. So now everyone feels as though when the company thrives, they thrive along with it. And it's not just a job, but it's actually part of an investment of their life and their future. And they seek that, so absolutely, absolutely. Now, what one decision would you say you've made that has been the most significant or the most meaningful in your life?
So I would say a decision that I made a while back was, so actually I'll give you a little context first. So I've been doing yoga now for about yoga meditation for about 17 years. And one of the things that I noticed, because yoga has a kind of repetitive nature to it, you don't always do the same things, but chances are you'll kind of have the same activity occur every now and then. And I remember I would go to these yoga classes and someone would do something just absolutely insane that would require so much strength and so much flexibility. And there'd be times where I would look at the yoga teacher and I would literally laugh out loud because I was like, you expect me to do that? No way. And one of the things that I realized after like years of doing this practice was that, there were things that I thought I could never do. And I would keep showing up and they would keep asking me to do these same things. And it wouldn't work. And then one day it worked. And it made me realize that, and they say yoga is kind of practice for life in a way. It is that if you keep showing up and if you keep trying, things that you never thought were possible can happen. So a decision that I made based on that information was that I'm always just going to try. I'm not going to count myself out of the race without trying. And I might be terrible at it. And sometimes I am. I mean, I have face planted literally on a yoga floor. but it also creates opportunities for you to surprise yourself. Because more often than not, when you get in and you try, you can. And if you can't do it right now in this moment, if you keep practicing, you will. Or at least you'll get a little closer. And that progress is so meaningful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think one lessons that we learn at some point in our lives is that we're not in competition with others, we're in competition with ourselves. And once you really understand that then trying becomes just doing, because you're getting better and you're doing something you never did before. So of course it's not going to work. It shouldn't work the very first time, but just the process of doing it and the commitment to stay with that, you grow as a result. So again, that's rewarding within itself. So,
and you think about how many opportunities people miss out on because they're afraid they won't be good enough. They're afraid they can't handle it. And at least if you put yourself out there, you try, you can at least know that you tried. You moved in that direction. You're not self-rejecting.
Exactly. I look at activities like that, like cooking. You're trying different recipes. And it's like, okay, well, let me try and make it this way. Oh, that was nasty. Now you learn, I'm not going to make it like that. It's too much sugar, too much salt, too much whatever it is you use. But then you learn from that process. And then once you get to a point where you master that feeling of reward, that feeling of fulfillment you get from that can't be measured, can't be purchased, can only be experienced. So I concur everything what you're saying. Now, I'm a connector as a business, and to me, a data-driven connector is a background system engineer. Everything for me has a logical process. I have characteristics that I look for, the people that I make relationships with, that I look to connect with, and I'm very thought data-driven. And I'm curious to know if others are like that. So my question for you, when you are either meeting people in person or someone reaches out to you on LinkedIn with a connection request, are there certain characteristics you look for establishing that connection before you say yes or engage in people in conversations in person?
I can relate to what you're saying. I do appreciate, kind of the systems and the logic, but I would say I tend to be pretty collaborative and I enjoy people a lot. So I'm willing to, honestly, I'm willing to give it a try with anyone at the core of it because I'm just kind of curious to see what will come of it. But my core people that are a mainstay in my life, whether personal or professional, tend to be very big-hearted people. I tend to surround myself with people who care a lot and who act on that care frequently, and use their skills to be able to do good for the world in some way.
I love that answer. I love that answer. And this is kind of a part two to that, or a continuation to that question, because I believe that everything comes down to who we co-create with, and you just alluded to that. And I'm big on helping conscious leaders identify and then strategic partners. So I'm curious to know, who would you consider to be a great strategic partner for you?
Honestly, I'm open. Maybe it's like a spiritual side of me that I'm not acknowledging, but there is a part of me that thinks that there's this, you have your goals, you have your plans, and then life happens around you, and together you dance, and something magical comes of that. And so I'm open, and I think that there's a learning opportunity in every interaction, and I'm open to see where the connections I make over the course of my life take me.
Okay, I respect that, understand that. Now, you've accomplished quite a bit in your life, and I'm always curious to know, I'm actually interviewing, is there one thing, I know it's difficult to try to say one thing, obviously, but whatever comes to mind when you first hear this question, you would say, of all things you've accomplished, what has been the most rewarding?
You know what? I want to say the dissertation because it's front of mind, and the PhD because that was a lot of work. But I think, strangely, one of the things, I made a realization a few years ago. I like to be helpful. I like to put myself out there. I like to help people wherever I can, especially if I feel like I have the resources to do so. And I remember at one point, there were a lot of people that were coming to me, and they were asking me questions and asking me for my help on things. And I was really busy. And I remember in that moment feeling very grateful. Like, I was stressed. I was definitely spread a little thin, but I remembered feeling really grateful. And in that moment, I realized that people wouldn't be asking for my help if I didn't have resources to offer. And so I felt really proud of myself in that moment, that I had gotten myself to a point where not only was I able to benefit from the work that I had done, but I was also able to help other people and be able to share my resources with others. It was very much a testament to kind of the skills that I'd built with time. And it was lovely to be able to share that with other people.
Okay. Excellent. Now that you have each time I've spoken with you, you come off very pleasing, very pleasant, very assured of yourself, and very positive at the same time. And I'm curious to know, are there certain morning rituals that you do each day to kind of put yourself in that, regardless of whatever's happening to you, this is the state you're going to be in?
I am not myself unless I move. So because especially I work from home, even before the pandemic, I've always worked from home. So if I don't get out and move first thing in the morning, I'm going to sit all day long. So the first thing I do every morning, I literally have my clothes set out. I throw on some clothes, I go work out, I come home, eat a nice, nourishing breakfast. Because I think we forget that, to have the energy that we need, we not only need to sleep, but we also need to nourish our body. We need to give it good fuel. So I'm very conscious of eating well so that I have the fuel that I need to be able to thrive. And then I afterwards will sit and meditate, which helps me to calm my mind and to just kind of center myself so that I can go into things with a sense of calm and a sense of intention.
Okay. Now we're down to my two questions, and arguably some of my favorite questions of the interview. So I learned a lot about how people think and who they are based on these two questions. And it would be this, and I'll set the context of what I mean by this. Is there a king connection that you would like to meet? And what I mean by king connection, I'm not referring to my company, but it is a moniker that I assigned to an individual who has received or achieved a certain success in life, whether it's financial, career, professional, personal, where you look at this individual, you admire them, and you know that if you were to meet this individual, not as a fan, but as a create with, that you can make something wonderful happen, bringing your resources, your social capital, your intellectual capital, mirrored with theirs. Who would that be? So let me give you a better context. Like, for example, mine would be Magic Johnson. And Magic Johnson, not just because he's a celebrity, because he's a brilliant businessman. He's a man that always, when he walks in a room, his smile attracts people. And other people who I admire him and talk about having him in their life as an advisor to change their lives. And he's done a lot of community work that I'm working on. So I know that if him and I were to come together, we could make some things happen. And my process is, I don't want to come at Magic where I'm a fan, I'm here and he's here, but I want to come at him where we see each other mutually as co-creators in that space. Context, who would you say would be a great king connection for you?
I mean, I would say, and this is someone that is a part of your network, or can it be anyone?
Well, I have a process for getting to them, so yeah, it could be anyone.
Okay.
I believe everybody's achievable or reachable. Let me say it that way.
I would say my hero, and I'm definitely a fan. I don't know that I can ever get rid of that, but I would say that my hero and person that I look up to the most in life is Oprah Winfrey. And the reason for that is because she has an incredible way of being present with people, of listening deeply, of inquiring deeply, asking great questions. And she is a person that has overcome so much adversity and has built something incredible. And her entire platform runs on the purpose of spreading love and light and enlightenment. And I think that that's really special. And one would just love to meet her in any capacity, but to actually be able to work with someone like that and see how she sees the world and her perspective would be fantastic.
Excellent. Oprah is definitely one of my king connections as well. So you're not limited to just one, but it's just one that I asked within this question context. And finally, my final question would be, what book either you have read that has been the most influential in your life, or that you're currently reading that you would say has really influenced you now, that you would recommend to this audience?
I love books in general, so there are many. But I come from, my graduate program was in positive psychology, specialized in positive psychology. Even though I wasn't in positive psychology myself, it was a part of my department. And I, by proxy of that, got an opportunity to learn a lot about positive psychological methods, how they work in the workplace and the like. And I recently came across this book by Shawn Achor, The Happiness Advantage. And never have I ever seen positive psychological concepts made so practical and so grounded. And I love it because the basic premise of the book is, a lot of us, as my previous professor, Dr. Jeremy Hunter, would say, a lot of us are living for Vegas. A lot of us are like, I'll be happy when I accomplish this. I'll be happy once I do this. I'll be happy once I go on that vacation. And we postpone and we delay our happiness. But what this book argues is that it should actually go the exact opposite way. That success doesn't actually predict happiness as much as happiness predicts success. And so the whole book gives, there's construction outside, shares these principles that help us to be well and help us to create better lives for ourselves so that we can be more successful out in the world. And it's extraordinarily inspiring. It includes some really interesting research, and it's very practical and grounded and easy to understand and digest. It's beautifully written. So I would definitely recommend it.
Well, say the title again one more time, please.
It's called The Happiness Advantage by Shawn Achor.
Thank you. When you shared that with me, that example you used it reminds me of an old saying that I heard from Dr. Wayne Dyer, old parable. It was a parable of the old cat and the young cat. And so this old cat is watching this young cat in this alley chasing his tail. He's just constantly chasing his tail. So the old cat said, "What are you doing? Why are you chasing your tail like this?" He says, "I was told that happiness is in my tail, so I'm trying to find it." And the old cat said, "Oh, well, I too was told that happiness was in my tail, so I'll go for it and let happiness follow me." So that book you just shared with me reminds me of that parable. So definitely thank you for sharing it. And as we bring this interview to a close, I want to ask you if there's anything you want to share with our listening audience, any closing thoughts that you may have, as well as any contact information that you'd like to share as well.
Absolutely. So I'm on LinkedIn, Mona Farid-Nejad, and feel free to reach out. I love to collaborate. I just love to hear from people. I love making friends. Even if you have no purpose at all and you just want to talk and say hello, I am 100% in. In fact, that would make me happier than just about anything else in the world. But at the end of the day, I just want to acknowledge that these are like very difficult times that we're living in right now. And if anyone can find an opportunity to just kind of be good to themselves in the midst of everything that's happening in the world and all the challenges going on, anything you can do to invest in yourself and care for yourself and connect with the people who you love the most and feel enriched and nourished by that. I hope that you find the opportunity. And if you need a new friend to connect with, I'm here too. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your wonderful interview. Thank you for your investment of time and energy into joining us today for the King Connections podcast. And for our listening audience, thank you all who watched this. We look forward to providing you more informative content, more great conscious leaders you can meet. And until next time, I wish everyone a blessed and productive day. Thank you.